I found my wife cheating with her boss, Tom, during our mansion's auction, only to discover she transferred $250, $0 into his offshore account before filing for divorce and secretly hiding an entire property worth over $1 million in her sister's name. Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating during what was supposed to be a high-class mansion auction, but that's exactly what happened. One moment, I was standing there, admiring the antique chandeliers and pretending to be impressed by the rare artwork, and the next, I stumbled onto a bombshell I'd never seen coming. It was like the ground beneath me cracked open and swallowed me whole. My wife Lisa had always been the picture of perfection, beautiful, confident, a little bitchy at times, but I loved her. We'd been married for 10 years and I thought we had a solid life. We had a mansion, a couple of luxury cars, and a business that was doing pretty well. But lately I'd noticed her acting strange, secretive calls, late nights, and her phone always hidden away. She'd brush it off, call me paranoid, say I was overthinking. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The signs weren't subtle anymore. She'd start fights for no reason, accuse me of being distant, and then suddenly switch to acting overly clingy, trying to make me think she was the innocent wife. But I wasn't buying it. Then during the auction, I saw her slip her phone into her purse as if she was hiding something. I caught a glimpse of a message pop up on her screen and my stomach dropped. It was a transfer confirmation, 250, transferred to an offshore account in Tom's name. Tom was her boss, a guy she'd been working with for a while, but I'd always thought he was just her business partner. Turns out he was more than that. I didn't confront her right away. I needed to gather proof. So I followed her that evening after the auction. She was acting even more nervous, texting constantly. I found her sneaking into a fancy hotel downtown, she'd told me. She was meeting a client. I snuck around and saw her go into a room with Tom. They didn't even bother to hide their chemistry. It was obvious they were doing more than just talking business. Their hands were all over each other, and I could hear the muffled sounds of sex through the thin hotel door. I was stunned. My wife, my partner of a decade, was screwing her boss during a high-profile event. I never thought she'd be capable of such betrayal. I felt sick, furious, and completely powerless. How could I have missed all the signs? How could she lie so effortlessly? I'd always been a good husband, worked hard, supported her dreams, never cheated. And here she was, screwing around with her boss, Tom, like I was just some fool she married for convenience. The worst part was realizing she'd already transferred the money, 250, before she even filed for divorce. That's $250,000 gone, right into Tom's offshore account. She was planning her escape from the start. And she'd hidden an entire property worth over $1 million in her sister's name, just to throw me off the scent. It was like a huge game to her, and I was just the idiot who got played. I couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was the betrayal, the lies, the money she'd stolen, and the fact that she'd been lying to me for years. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly, a little broken. I kept replaying that moment outside the hotel door, hearing her moan with Tom, knowing I'd been so blind. My mind raced through all the times she'd lied, all the secrets she'd kept, and I wondered how I'd ever trust her again, or if I even wanted to. After catching her with Tom that night, I knew I couldn't just pretend like nothing had happened. The betrayal cut too deep. I stayed up all night staring at the ceiling, trying to process what I'd seen. The images kept flashing, her moans, Tom's smug face, the way she looked at him like he was her whole world. It was like I'd been hit by a freight train. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. The next morning I confronted her. I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I found her in the kitchen, pretending to be busy with her coffee, her face a mask of innocence. I dropped the bomb. "Lisa, I know everything. I saw you with Tom last night, and I know about the money transfer. $250, $0 gone into his offshore account, and the property in your sister's name. What the hell is going on?" She looked at me, her eyes wide, then quickly shifted into that typical bitchy smirk. You're overreacting, Jason. You always jump to conclusions. I was just talking to Tom about work. You know how stressful things are lately. You're so paranoid, it's ridiculous. She tried to brush it off, acting like I was the crazy one, but I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. I pulled out the bank statements, the transfer receipts, the proof. Her face faltered, but she quickly recovered, throwing out more lies. Okay, fine, she snapped. Yes, I transferred some money, but it's none of your business. I'm planning to file for divorce anyway, so what does it matter? You're wasting your energy trying to control me. Tom and I, well, it's been a long time coming. I deserve happiness, Jason, and clearly you're not enough anymore. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was so calm, so dismissive about it all. It's like she didn't even care that she just admitted to cheating, stealing, and planning her escape. I felt a mix of rage and sadness. Rage because she betrayed me so thoroughly, and sadness because I still loved her, or maybe just the idea of what we once had. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just looked at her and knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her walk away with everything, money, the house, the property, without consequences. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, but I also knew I had to get my act together. I wasn't going to let her screw me over without fighting back. I started digging into her financials more. Turns out, she'd been funneling money into Tom's offshore account for months, probably even before I suspected anything. She'd hidden a huge property, over $1 million worth, in her sister's name. I found out because I hired a private investigator after her dismissive attitude and her lies. That's when I learned about the property, about how she'd been planning her escape for a long time. I felt so betrayed. All those years I'd been working my ass off to give us a good life, and she'd been secretly screwing around, stealing from us, and plotting to leave me with nothing. It was like I'd been living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I thought about her lying there, her perfect smile, her fake tears, I wanted to scream. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly, cheat so openly, and then just turn around and act like I was the problem? I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with it. I started planning my next move, thinking about how to get back what was mine, my money, my house, my dignity. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. She was a manipulator, a liar, a thief. And Tom, well, he was just as bad, if not worse. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, not without a fight. After I gathered enough evidence, I decided I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. The betrayal was one thing, but losing $250,000 and a property worth over $1 million, that was a different level of damage. I knew I had to act quickly, before she managed to drain any more from our accounts or hide away more assets. I reached out to a lawyer I found through a recommendation. I wanted to make sure I had all my bases covered. The first thing I did was freeze the account she had transferred money into, especially that offshore account with Tom's name on it. I also hired a private investigator to follow her movements. I needed to know if she was planning to run or hide anything else. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her financials and the property she'd hidden in her sister's name. It was a house worth over $1 million, and she kept it completely under wraps. I discovered that her sister was in on it. She'd been told to hold the property for her sister's security. But I knew the truth. Lisa had been planning her escape for months, maybe even over a year. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I felt like I'd been played for a fool, and now I was just trying to piece everything back together. I knew I could confront her directly yet, not without risking her hiding more of what she'd stolen. Instead, I decided to wait, gather everything, and prepare for a serious confrontation. One night, I found out from the pie that Lisa was planning to leave the country. She had booked flights under a fake name, trying to slip away with what she could. That was the last straw. I called my lawyer first thing the next morning and told him everything. We quickly moved to get a court order to freeze her assets and prevent her from leaving the country. I also had to prepare for a divorce fast. While all this was happening, Lisa kept acting like nothing was wrong. She threw her usual tantrums, calling me paranoid and controlling. She kept lying about her intentions, saying she was just taking some time to think, and that she loved me. But her actions told a different story. She was trying to cover her tracks, hide her money, and run. I could see right through her. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. I kept wondering how I could have been so blind. For so many years, I'd worked so hard to build a life with her, and in the end, it was all a lie. Every time I thought about her lying in bed with Tom, I felt like I was drowning. But I also knew I couldn't let her win, not like this. I had to fight for what was mine, my dignity, my money, my future. I started making arrangements to file for divorce. I wanted her out of my life. I knew I'd have to deal with the fallout, but I was determined to reclaim what she'd tried to steal from me. I also contacted a forensic accountant to track down every penny she'd hidden or transferred. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not without a fight. In the midst of all this chaos, I kept thinking about the kind of person she was. Bitchy, manipulative, a liar who would do anything to get what she wanted. And Tom, he was just as corrupt, just as guilty. I couldn't believe I'd been married to someone who'd lie so easily, cheat so blatantly, and steal so much without a second thought. It was a wake-up call I never saw coming. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to take everything back. By the time I had everything in motion, court orders, asset freezes, and the divorce papers drafted, I felt a strange mix of relief and rage. Relief because I was finally taking control, and rage because I'd been so completely played. The truth was, I'd lost a lot of trust, maybe even myself in the process. Lisa's lies had cut deeper than I ever expected, and her betrayal had left me questioning everything I thought I knew about us. She didn't take the news well. When I confronted her with the court orders, her face twisted into that familiar bitchy smirk, trying to act like I was overreacting. "You're ruining everything, Jason," she snapped, voice dripping with fake innocence. "I never wanted to hurt you. I just needed more excitement, more passion. Tom was just a distraction. You're so paranoid, it's pathetic." She threw her hands up, acting like she was the victim, but I knew better. She was just trying to spin her lies again to make herself look innocent. I didn't argue. I just told her she was done. The house, the money, the property, they were all going to be split according to the law, and she was going to face the consequences of her actions. I wanted her out of my life, out of my house, and away from my money. I'd been blinded for too long, but now I was seeing everything clearly. I'd been a fool, but I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. Meanwhile, I kept pushing forward with the legal process. I had the forensic accountant digging through her accounts, tracing every penny she'd hidden or transferred. The offshore account with Tom's name. It was frozen now, the property in her sister's name. We filed to have it transferred back to her. I knew she was trying to hide more, but I was determined to find it all. The hardest part was dealing with the emotional fallout. I felt crushed, like I'd lost not just my money but also my sense of trust and security. The woman I married, the woman I loved, had turned into a complete stranger, someone capable of lying, stealing, and cheating behind my back. I kept replaying the moments I caught her with Tom, the way she lied about everything, how she dismissed my concerns like I was just some paranoid fool. It hurt more than I can say. In the quiet moments, I'd sit alone and wonder how I got here. How did I miss all the signs? How did I let her manipulate me for so long? But I also knew I had to focus on moving forward. I couldn't change what she did, but I could control how I responded. I decided I'd rebuild, better, smarter, more cautious. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that trust is fragile, and some people will lie and cheat without a second thought. I also started planning how to get my life back on track financially. I was going to make sure she didn't walk away with a single cent more than she was entitled to by law. I hired a financial advisor to help me navigate the mess she left behind, and I began the process of liquidating some of our assets to secure my future. I had to be smart because she'd already stolen enough. She'd taken $250,000, and I knew she was planning to take even more if I let her. Throughout all this, I kept feeling the same burning anger, not just at her but at the whole situation. I'd been so by her bitchy, manipulative ways. I thought I knew her, but I'd been living with a lie. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone willing to lie, cheat, and steal her way out of our life together. It was a brutal lesson, but one I had to learn the hard way. Now I was just waiting for the final court dates, the official divorce decree, and the chance to start over. I knew she'd fight me every step of the way, she always did, so I was prepared for the battle. But deep down, I knew I'd come out of this stronger. I'd rebuild my life, my trust in myself, and make sure she didn't get away with what she'd done. Because in the end, betrayal like hers isn't just about money or property. It's about the trust you place in someone you think is your partner. And I'd be damned if I let her take that from me too. The legal battles dragged on longer than I expected, but I stayed the course. Every day I pushed forward knowing that I was reclaiming what was rightfully mine, even if it felt like I was fighting through a storm of lies and deception. I had to stay strong because I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight. She was already trying to spin the story to her friends and family, claiming I was the crazy one, accusing me of overreacting and trying to control her. But I had the proof now: bank statements, transfer receipts, court orders, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate her way out of this. One of the worst parts was dealing with her constant manipulation. She'd come to the house, acting like she was the victim, crying crocodile tears, saying she'd made mistakes but still loved me. It was exhausting. She'd say things like, "Jason, I never meant for it to be like this," or "You're just jealous of Tom," trying to turn everything around on me. But I saw through it. I knew her game now. She was desperate, trying to cling to what she could, but I refused to let her. Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her. The pie told me she was still trying to hide some assets, covertly, transferring money to offshore accounts, and even attempting to get her hands on the property in her sister's name. I hired a forensic accountant who uncovered some more suspicious transactions: small transfers, shell companies, suspicious bank accounts, anything to cover her tracks. I felt a strange mix of disgust and resolve. She'd gone to such lengths to cheat and steal, and I was determined to expose every last detail. The turning point came when I finally got a court hearing to freeze her assets permanently. The judge was clear: any attempt to transfer or hide assets would be considered contempt of court. That was a huge relief, knowing she couldn't run or hide anymore. I also filed for full custody of our joint accounts and demanded the return of the property in her sister's name. I wanted everything back under my control, and I was willing to fight for it. Throughout all this, Lisa's behavior grew more erratic. She'd lash out, call me heartless, accuse me of trying to ruin her life. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was destroying her future because I was so paranoid and controlling. But I knew her lies now. I saw her for what she was: a manipulative, selfish woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted, even if it meant destroying everything we had. I also started to think about the emotional aftermath. I was angry, yes, but I was also hurt. I'd invested so much in that marriage: my time, my trust, my money, and she'd thrown it all away for Tom and her greed. I kept asking myself how I could have missed all the warning signs, how I could have been so blind. But I also realized that her betrayal wasn't about me. It was about her own greed and selfishness, and I wasn't going to let her win by making me feel small or guilty. The final blow came when I received the court's ruling. The property in her sister's name would be transferred back to her, and Lisa would have to pay back the stolen money, plus interest. It wasn't just about getting my money back. It was about holding her accountable. I felt a strange sense of closure, knowing I'd done everything in my power to fight for what was mine. I started to piece my life back together. I sold off some of the assets she'd tried to hide, moved into a smaller place, and focused on rebuilding my confidence. It wasn't easy. Every day brought reminders of her betrayal, but I was determined to move on. I realized that the pain of her lies and cheating was a lesson in trust and caution. I'd never let myself be so vulnerable again. Looking back, I see how much I've grown. I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can be the biggest liars and thieves. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I fought hard and I won back what was mine. I don't regret fighting for my dignity, even if it cost me a lot emotionally and financially. Now I focus on healing and rebuilding. I know she's out of my life for good, and I'm finally free from her manipulations. The betrayal still stings, but I refuse to let it define me. Because at the end of the day, the lesson is simple: trust is fragile, and some people will do anything to betray you. But you have to stand up, fight back, and reclaim what's yours. That's what I did, And honestly, I feel a lot better knowing I didn't let her get away with everything. Looking back now, I realize how much this entire ordeal changed me. I used to believe in the idea of a perfect marriage, in loyalty and honesty. But Lisa taught me that sometimes, the person you trust the most can turn out to be the biggest liar and thief. It's a harsh lesson, but one that I needed to learn. I've come out of this battered but stronger, more cautious about who I let into my life and what I'm willing to accept. The pain of betrayal is still there, but it's tempered by the knowledge that I fought for myself. I fought for my money, my dignity, my peace of mind. I learned that some people will manipulate and lie just to get what they want: money, property, or just the thrill of control. Lisa was one of those people. She thought she could get away with everything, but I made sure she paid the price. I've come to see that revenge isn't just about getting back what's stolen. It's about reclaiming your own sense of self. I didn't want her to walk away with everything, and I didn't want her to think she could treat me like a fool, so I fought legally, financially, emotionally. I took everything back piece by piece, and now I'm finally starting to rebuild. I've also learned to trust my instincts more. That gut feeling you ignore, it's usually right. If something feels off, don't dismiss it. That's how I caught her in the first place. And I've learned that honesty, even if it's painful, is always better than living a lie. I don't regret uncovering her secrets, because without that, I'd still be living in her web of lies. To anyone out there going through something similar, my advice is simple. Don't ignore the signs. Be vigilant, protect your assets, and don't let betrayal destroy you. Sometimes the only way to move forward is to fight for what's yours, whether that's your money, your trust, or your peace of mind. It's not easy, and it hurts like hell, but in the end, standing up for yourself is the best revenge. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity. I now see the importance of self-respect and the value of being cautious with who I trust. I've learned that the truth, no matter how ugly, will always come out. And when it does, you have to be ready to face it head on. So here I am, finally free from her lies, stronger than I ever thought I could be. I can't change what happened, but I can control how I respond. I choose to move on, wiser and more guarded, but also hopeful. Because no matter how deep the betrayal, life goes on, and you have the power to rebuild, to start over, and to find happiness again.